Okay, this isn't the encounter idea we're gonna roll with today, but I just think it would be hilarious to have an intelligent Hydra with 5 heads and each head had a different personality. And some heads would argue with the other heads, and then when you lobbed off one of the heads, not only would it grow back an additional head, it would grow back an additional personality as well. Yeah. But anyways, hello, my name is Matt and welcome to My Hidden Nerdy Side, a channel created by a nerd who doesn't have many nerdy friends and so I must rant to you, and today we're going to be looking at the Hydra. Now, when I personally think of badass Hydra encounters, the best one that pops into my mind is actually the one from Disney's Hercules. And even if it's not the same one, I think most people, whenever they think of an epic monster encounter, they want it to be on the same level of hype and excitement. However, one of the biggest issues with single epic monster encounters in Dungeons & Dragons is once you get to a certain level, it becomes pretty simple to just chain CC them and melt away their HP with minimal effort. That being said, I think the Hydra is the one epic monster that is weak enough to be used on lower level parties, but strong enough to be fun and engaging. So that's the goal of the encounter today. It's as simple as that. We're going to create an epic feeling Hydra encounter you can steal, modify, and plop directly into your D&D games. Now, if you are well aware of the lore and mechanics behind the Hydra, then feel free to pop on over to the timestamp right here so you can jump straight to the encounter itself. I'll leave a clickable version in the description below. Alright, let's take a quick look at the Hydra. The Hydra lore, info, abilities, and so on will be pulled directly from page 190 of the Monster Manual. So, according to D&D lore, at the dawn of time, the dragon goddess Tiamat killed a rival dragon goddess called Lernaea, and after doing so, Tiamat sprinkled her blood across the multiverse, and from each one of these droplets of blood spawned a Hydra. And each Hydra is said to have a hunger equal to Lernaea's hatred. This hatred Lernaea has must be pretty insane because Hydras are always hungry. They have a gluttonous appetite and eat every creature in sight until its hunting ground is empty, only to move on to the next. In fact, Hydras are so hungry that if there's not enough food around, its multiple heads will turn on each other and start eating itself alive. And finally, and I think an underused fact about Hydras, is they are naturally good swimmers. They can usually be found near rivers, lakes, shallow oceans, and other areas like that. This is all cool information, but what really makes Hydras epic is their actions and abilities, which can be found in their stat block on page 190 of the Monster Manual. So, they can hold their breath for 1 hour, have a swim speed equal to their movement speed, and while a Hydra sleeps, one head is always awake so it can keep a lookout. This can all lead to some awesome encounters, but the real fun comes in from their multiple heads. A Hydra can take as many attacks as it has heads, and they typically start with 5, but of course give them as many heads as you like. But on top of this, Hydras get an extra reaction for each head they have. This now equals up to 10 attacks per round if they start with 5 heads. And on top of that, if a Hydra takes 25 or more damage in a single turn, one of their heads die. However, at the end of their next turn, they regrow twice as many heads. If they lose 1 head, they regrow 2, if they lose 2, they regrow 4, and so on. They also regain 10 hit points for each head that's regrown unless they have taken fire damage, and have advantage on saving throws against being blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, stunned, and being knocked unconscious so long as they have more than 1 head. So depending on how strong your party is and how beefy you want to end up making your Hydra, you could potentially have double-digit heads springing into existence, creating a terrifying, fun, and super visual encounter. So, let's do that. Let's craft an encounter. The Hydra encounter we'll be making today will be aimed at parties level 5 to 9 depending on how difficult you want to make it and last 1 session. The party's motivation should always be tailored to the campaign, but for this encounter, we will say there is something in a dark, dingy cave that your party needs to retrieve that is important to their main quest. The motivation and setup for this encounter won't be too in-depth, because unlike some of the creatures we've built encounters around, this is going to be more about making the combat experience as epic as possible. So, in order to do that, first we're going to homebrew the Hydra ever so slightly. All we're going to do is make it much bigger, going from huge to gargantuan, probably around 50 feet in height. Then we're going to stretch their bite attack range from 10 feet to 30 feet as well. Now, this might seem absolutely ridiculous and broken, but just trust me, it will make sense in a second. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, I need to let you know right now that there is one spell that will derail any Hydra encounter if it lands. Unfortunately, there isn't much you can really do about it as a DM without some serious homebrew or plot shenanigans, and that spell is slow. Why? Well, slow is to Hydras what Kryptonite is to Superman. It makes it so creatures can only make one attack on their turn and can't take any reactions. And so, your super deadly and scary Hydra with up to 10 attacks in a single turn gets instantly nerfed to 1. So, if we want our Hydra encounter to be super epic, we need to make sure the party doesn't know they're fighting a Hydra. How's that possible? Well, that's where their swim speed comes into play. So your party will enter a dark and dingy cave. After traveling for a while, they will reach a large lake in the middle of the cave that stretches out as far as the eye can see. They will also see 2 giant chains that extend so far they can't even see where they end. They will also see a lever and a 30 by 30 foot stone slab that the chains attach to. The lever is placed on the stone slab, implying that if the party hops onto the stone slab and pulls the lever, they will be taken across. As your party begins to be dragged across this giant lake, they will be able to spot little pools of discolored water, which, if they're perceptive, they can deduce it's blood. Of course, there won't be any corpses to go along with the blood, which will puzzle the party. But why aren't there any corpses? Well, because a Hydra would never waste a scrap of meat, would they? As your party gets further and further away from shore, the Hydra will slowly begin to swim towards them, deep beneath the water, and slowly but surely make their way to the party. If the party makes their perception check or the Hydra just rolls really bad on stealth, they may be able to see some air bubbles coming out of the water or hear some movement. But eventually, a single massive serpentine-like head with incredibly sharp teeth will emerge and try to bite and drag down one of the PCs. Combat will ensue, and your party will most likely deal with the single head rather quickly. But by the next round of combat, all 5 heads will jump out of the water and begin to wreak havoc on the now trapped party. After that, combat continues on as normal. If they deal enough damage, a head will slink down into the water and disappear, only for 2 more to return. Maybe a fighter will get a clean cut and just slice one of the heads clean off. Or maybe a monk delivers a swift uppercut that shatters its skull. Then the pattern will continue on until the party puts an end to this terrifying monster. So why this encounter? Why the stealthy underwater approach? Well, for 2 main reasons. Firstly, it makes the combat more epic and suspenseful since they don't know it's a Hydra. Not knowing how long it will take to defeat this massive, never-ending barrage of serpentine-like heads will be extremely scary for any adventuring party. But on top of that, it prevents potential metagaming since it won't be apparent this creature is a Hydra since its main body will be hidden deep beneath the water. Which is why we needed to homebrew the longer necks like we discussed earlier. If the party is convinced each head is its own monster, they might not instinctively cast spells like Slow or anything to do with fire since they don't know it's a direct counter. However, that brings me to my second point, which is these secrets can still be learned, which allows your PCs to feel smart when they discover them. Say a curious PC is getting suspicious and looks down into the water during combat and succeeds on their perception check. They can notice that all the heads are connected to a single body and then shout out to the sorcerer to cast a slow spell. Maybe someone notices after casting a fireball that the heads didn't spawn the following round, shouting out to the rest of the party to use any fire abilities or weapons that they have. If you think about any epic monster battle from just about any classic adventuring story, the heroes are first at a disadvantage or overwhelmed. But then after finding the key to victory or by sheer willpower, they're able to overcome the fearsome foe. And that is what this encounter accomplishes. So, a single epic monster fight that puts your party on edge and has the potential for more cinematic moments than I can count? I'd say this encounter is already pretty spicy. But how do we make it even spicier? Well, for higher level parties, what if each Hydra head was associated with a different magical type and each one of them had a miniature breath attack that dealt that type of damage? One breathes fire, one shoots out acid, and on and on and on. You could have the Hydra simply try to break through the stone slab from underneath the water, forcing members of your party to dive in and fight the wretched serpentine creature on its turf before it destroys your party's only way of transportation. And finally, what if the Hydra leapt onto the stone slab and your party had to carefully maneuver around the slab and even on top of the monster without falling into the water? Or even better, being bitten and thrown off by the Hydra. But of course, these are just some of the ways you can use Hydras in your Dungeons & Dragons campaign. There are tons of different ways to take this encounter and spice it up, so please, let me know what you would do in the comment section below so I can nerd out over it and smack myself in the head for not thinking of it. Also, let me know if there are any creatures you would like me to build an encounter for in my future videos. I'm going to be putting out at least one of these videos a week, so feel free to subscribe and share this video around if you liked it, and stay tuned for upcoming content. Thanks for watching and indulging my hidden nerdy side.